Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Welcome to Herefordshire, and welcome to this meeting of the West Mercia Police and Crime Panel, 25th of July. My name is Barry Durkin. I'm the councillor and the chairman, the current chairman. And just a few notes to start with. I want to make a few welcomes, introductions, because we've had a bit of a change around of councillors. And I want to welcome new members to the panel. It's Councillor Duncan Kerr. There you are. There you are. Sorry. I'll get to know your face shortly, no doubt. Raj Mehta. I saw that name there. It gives it away, doesn't it? And Monica Stringfellow. Hello. Welcome. Welcome. And Richard Udall. Councillor
Udall has given his apologies. He's
right.
From Worcester City
Thank
Council.
you. That will come later. And I want to thank those outgoing members who served so diligently on the panel for the last periods, as Councillor Joe Beecham, Richard Overton, Tom Petowski and Tony Parsons. Thank you so much for your services to the panel in the past. The change of the substantive members of the panel are Monica Stringfellow has replaced Councillor Joe Beecham, and Richard Udall has replaced Tom Petowski. I hope I mentioned his name right. Councillor Richard Overton has been is no longer the substantive member, and Kelly Middleton has been the now the substantive member. So welcome. Do we have any name substitutes?
No, Chairman.
Right, thank you for that. Apologies and declarations of interest. We have apologies from
Councillor Richard Udall and Carol Clive, who's running late.
Right, thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of it?
Councillor.
Sorry.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Throughout John's annual reports, he's mentioned ICVs. So I just need to declare that actually I am an ICV.
Independent custody visitor.
Ah, right. Sorry.
Sorry, independent custody visitor.
Right, thank you very much. Any other information, any other declarations of interest? No? Right, thank you for that. Now, the appointment of co-opting members, you will see we've got one from Shropshire Council, which is Councillors Roger Evans, Vivian Parry and Duncan Kerr. Herefordshire Council, Councillor Liz Harvey, and Tilford and Reeking, Councillor Raj Mehta. Welcome. Now, we get to the point of this proceedings where we are looking for the election of a chairman, and because of that, I will now bow out and pass over to Sam to deal with this. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. So can I call for any nominations for chairman, please? Rob?
I would like to propose that Barry Durkin continues. Many of you have worked with Barry over the last few years, and those of you who haven't, I can assure you he will do his best. He was fired into the job as chairman perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, and the previous chairman resigned suddenly through work commitments. And I don't think Barry will mind me saying he hasn't been well of recent months. He's got a clear bill of health now, and all through that period, I mention that because all through that period he was still right on the ball about the business of this panel. So he is a very safe pair of hands, and I hope you will all support him to continue.
Any other nomination? Helen?
So I was going to say I'm happy to second that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Any other nominations?
Moving on.
I see no hands. On that basis, Councillor Durkin will be appointed chair for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, for your kind words, and thank you for seconding, and thank you all for those who know me, your confidence, and those who don't know, hopefully I can engender some confidence in you. So, welcome all. Right, moving on. The next appointment is to the appointment of vice chairman. Now, Rob, to my right here, has served us and me ably for the last year, isn't it, Rob? And he is a safe pair of hands as well. Always available on mobile or on email, and been occasions when I've had to have a chat to him. Always sensible, should we say, which is important, very important. So, without further ado, I'd like to propose Rob for vice chair. Second, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Chair, and congratulations on your reappointment, and good morning to the panel. Well, you can't have Morecambe without Wise, can you? You can't have Cannon without Ball, so absolutely.
Not little and large.
I didn't go there, Chair, I didn't go there. But very, very happy to second Rob. I've known Rob a long time, and I know that, you know, he will give his all to the job, so very happy to second.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Come and sit beside me. No? Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, moving on. Do we have any public participation? Nothing's been declared, is it?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. So we had no public participation, which is a shame in a way, because it's nice to hear from the public, to hear what they've got to say, what their concerns are, what their plaudits are, which is more important, so they understand some of the work that we're doing, because we are very visible doing the work that we do. Right, now the next part is confirmation of the minutes of the previous panel meetings. Now there are two meetings you'll see in the agenda. One's the 19th of January and the other is the 7th of February 24. Now I'd like those that attended that meeting, those meetings, plural, to indicate whether they approve of the minutes or some amendments. So take the 19th of January, all those that attended? Nobody. Rob, 1, 2, 3. Okay, any amendments? Right, thank you. That I'll sign those as we go forward. And the 7th of February? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Right, that's lovely. Thank you very much. The rest will be marked as not being absent. Now, confirmation of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. This is something that we are required to have a mind to, and I know that the Commissioner has gone through the process of appointing a deputy. Commissioner, would you like to open this meeting, part of the meeting?
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, panel. It's good to be in Herefordshire. It's been a while since the panel have met in Herefordshire, so it's good to be back here. So, as you alluded to, in relation to confirming my choice for Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, those people who've been on the panel a while will have been through this process before, in terms of when Mark was confirmed previously, but also may have been on the panel back when his predecessor was reconfirmed post the PCC elections back in 2021. And the reason I draw that to the panel's attention is there is a difference between selecting a new deputy and reconfirming one that has held the position for 18 months. And so I set out the statutory requirements of information that I am required to provide the panel for the panel's consideration. And I would draw to the panel's attention the process that I used in terms of re-interviewing Mark for the position. And that's to ensure that I am able to reassure myself and by extension commend to you that the competencies that I expect in a deputy have been tested via a process.
Chair, I'm ever so sorry to interrupt, John, but when John's name doesn't come up there, it says Alex Murray, so I'm not sure if John's using the right mic, but that might be quite disruptive.
No, I agree with you. I asked that be changed over, hence why we started a little bit late. Janelle, can we
Just think it might be a bit confusing for anybody who's watching.
You're quite right. Shall we pause the meeting until we get the IT sorted out? Okay. Right. On that basis, John, would you mind continuing with your presentation?
course, yes.
Always bearing in mind that you are wrongly named at the moment.
I,
You are now Chief Constable.
I would, temporary chief constable. I would never wish to aspire to such lofty position. So hopefully, people would know I'm not a police officer. So just as I was referring, I think, if I get where I got to in my introduction, is that I have reassured myself through the interview process that I went through in relation to Mark's assessment against those capabilities and competencies, but also the fact that I have run previously. Mark was originally selected through a competitive, externally advertised process. This is slightly different. This is a reconfirming somebody who has been through that open process, and I am reconfirming them in post. There is some discussion within government, the previous government, around how deputies are treated through police and crime commissioner elections for those that get re-elected, rather than the switching on and switching off that we have at the moment. I would say to you that Mark has conducted himself in exactly the way that I would want as Commissioner, which is to have the public at the heart of our work and supporting me in not only my holding to account duties, my supporting my development of strategy, but also out in the community. A number of you will have travelled from the far flungs of West Mercia today, and I'm very proud to be able to do that regularly, but on my own that would be a very daunting chance if you're in Oswestry of a morning and Ross and Y in an afternoon. There is some big geography involved, so having a deputy to assist me in doing that, and Mark's demonstrated over the last 18 months or so that he's been supporting me, his willingness to go to those far-flung parts, and that is an important part of my role, to be present in those communities. The commissionership doesn't run from Hindlip; it has to be relevant in those communities. So making sure we are ever present. And very lastly, I would suggest to you his long history of public service is exactly in line with not only my ethos as commissioner, but I think what the public would expect from their representative in policing, making sure they're actively seeking out those public views, and his history over the last 20 years in many different elected roles and in public service, I think is absolutely in line with what I would like as Commissioner. Now, I also recognise, Chairman, that whilst the panel's primary role is to satisfy itself as to the process, etc., that I followed, that accessing directly the candidate to test some of that is absolutely what they would want. So I'm sure the panel would wish to question Mark directly. The only ask I would have of the panel is he has been interviewed already, so this is a confirmation hearing, not a re-interview. But I am very proud to commend Mark Bayliss to you as my Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner candidate, and seek your confirmation. But as I say, happy for him to take questions directly.
Thank you, Commissioner. Welcome to this panel meeting, Mark. What I would like you to do, if you would, is to give you the opportunity to present to us your strengths and your thoughts about the role you're undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's great to have the opportunity to speak to you again. As John has highlighted, and as you've seen in my CV and the pack, I've got a long history of service in West Mercia. I've spent 23 years in elected office. I spent 10 years as a parish councillor, 21 years as a district councillor, and many roles within, in fact, almost all roles within Worcester City Council, in cabinet member, deputy leader, and leader for 5 years. And I've been a county councillor in Worcestershire for 8 years, and a cabinet member for most of that time, covering a range of portfolios, be that children's services, economic development, and for my sins currently, highways and transport. I have had the honour of being the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for West Mercia for the last 18 months, up to the end of John's previous term. It is a role that I have thoroughly enjoyed and hopefully made a contribution towards improving the policing and reducing crime within West Mercia. I've made it my job over the last 18 months to get out and to make sure that I have learnt about the patch, the whole of West Mercia. It is a very big geography. It takes literally hours from the south to the north. It would about half a day's trip, I suspect, from Ross-on-Wye to Oswestry. And I have made it my job to get out and to be visible and to engage with communities right across that patch. I keep a map of West Mercia in the office of everywhere I've visited to make sure that I am out and I'm visiting not just police stations but communities. And it's one of the great opportunities in this role is to actually represent the Commissioner at public events and activities such as we have public festivals and we have a rolling road show of activities right across the patch, and I've spent a large number of days out directly engaging with the public and hearing their views as part of that role. I suppose my strengths you asked for and why do I think I'm suitable for this? Well, as I say, I've been involved in public sector governance for the best part of a quarter of a century, setting budgets, scrutinising the work of officers, helping to devise strategies and putting the public's voice at the centre of all of that, representing the communities of whatever geography that it has been relevant. And I hope that I have learnt skills in that and working with people and with the other partner organisations. I chair the Crime Reduction Board in West Mercia in my previous term and have worked with a whole range of partners to help them to come together to tackle some of the thorny issues. And policing alone cannot do those things, and it's very much working with our partners in local authorities particularly, but also with health partners, those in regulatory organisations, the probation service. And I guess one of my skills is that sort of partnership work has been something that I've been engaged with for a long time, and so hopefully I bring some skills in being able to blend those together. So I won't detain you any further, Chairman, but that is why I think I'm very keen to continue in this role.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that comprehensive review. I'd like to open it up to the panel, if I may, now to look at, so they can ask questions of you, as they say, it's a confirmation rather than a selection. Look at what you understand about the Commission's views and priorities and vision, and also the strategies that are being adopted. How can you see your role working into that? But that's just a guidance. I'll leave it open to the public, the panel, to ask their own questions around your job role. First, Councillor Harvey, please.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I think rather than diving into strategy in detail, I think what I'd like to do is raise concerns that I have about the process of appointment here. It does say in the agenda pack papers at paragraph 6 for this item that the contract for the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner is coterminous with the Police and Crime Commissioner's term in office, making it clear that the contract ended with the end of the period in office of the Police and Crime Commissioner at the point where his re-election took place. And congratulations, John, on your re-election. The concern that I have is that, by the sounds of things, although a very proper process was gone through with open advertisement for the position and interviews of suitable candidates back in 2022, this is a new contract and the position was not openly advertised, for reasons of openness and transparency, my concern is that it should have been. And I'm disappointed that it wasn't, and I'm surprised that paragraph 8 talks about good practice from across England and Wales in terms of this being an accepted or common approach in the way that deputies are appointed to this important role. The Police and Crime Commissioner went through the fire of an election process and received a mandate from a very wide, from the footprint of the West Mercia Authority to confirm him in his position. And I think it's important that for a respectably salaried role such as this, with public money, that it goes through an open and transparent recruitment process, because this is a new contract. And I take on board all the points about the suitability of the deputy to fulfil the role. However, there may have been better candidates out there that we just simply don't know about and weren't given the opportunity to go through the interview process. So I'm just disappointed with the process, and would really encourage panel members to support a proposal that, you know, something better is done next time.
Before we express any disappointment, I think we need to understand exactly from the Police and Crime Commissioner what the process is and how it was undertaken. So, Commissioner, would you like to comment on this, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So I absolutely respect Councillor Harvey's position, and I look, for example, at local authorities, and indeed whether you're deputy leader of the council, whether you're appointed by the leader, or cabinet members appointed by the leader, there isn't an application and another process there. There is a democratic mandate from the political party who controls the council, and then indeed an individual decision made by the democratically elected leader of the people's representative, i.e. the leader of the council. This goes much further than that. I've been a councillor previously for a long time, aware in local government. I can't think of the last time somebody was made cabinet member or deputy leader and their CV or an interview process being put in place. But I recognise that I hold myself to maybe a slightly higher standard, so go through a process that tests the competencies to which I have already tested once, are there, and had the lived experience during their service in that role, and so therefore I am able to reassure myself and the panel that there is a fit and proper person for the panel to consider, because the test, I would humbly suggest that the legislation sets out, which is the matter for the panel, is whether or not it's a fit and proper person. So I absolutely get the contention that through a wide and open panel that there would be potentially other opportunities, but the panel's test is whether or not there is a fit and proper person, to which I commend to the panel that there is, and the evidence contained within the report. And in relation to the process, you're correct, Councillor Harvey, that the vast majority of PCCs who have deputies that have been re-elected do follow this process for the reasons that I would suggest. And here in West Mercia, we did exactly the same thing with my predecessor, Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, and indeed no objections raised at the time. And indeed, I would suggest the individual also went on to fulfil and pay back the trust that had been given by being a good deputy as a consequence. And the reason I mention that is I think there is history in West Mercia that this process has been proven to work, and the individuals who have occupied as a result have shown that they do indeed demonstrate what we would expect them to demonstrate.
Hey, Commissioner, any follow-up questions to that? Yeah. Okay. Tracy? Tracy,
Thank you, Mo.
question you
Mine
had.
isn't a follow-up question to
No,
that,
no, I
but
understand.
something
I was
separate.
just
Is that all
giving-
right?
I was just giving Councillor Howard
Yeah.
the ability to come back on that a point. But over to you, Tracy.
Yeah, that's fine. It was just a question to Mark, really, because I know it was difficult for you because you had a very hard act to follow, and that can be, you know, that can be extremely difficult, can't it? But
But do you want that voted upon?
I won't say it was me previously for those who didn't know. But I know, Mark, from my time with you on County Cabinet, that you are an absolute dogged adversary. I don't always call you that. I call you other things, but you are absolutely dogged, particularly at holding to account. And I know on the budget you will have been particularly ruthless. So I just wondered, because I know you're like that at County, are you like that in your holding to account with West Mercia Police? And if so, can you tell us some of your successes with holding to account?
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Chairman, for that. Yes, I think the scrutiny element of the role is really important. It's what John and I are there for in many ways, is to, you know, operational independence of the police have, but they are accountable for the delivery and of the Commissioner's police and crime plan. So yes, very much I've helped. You know, it's very much a team effort. Not John and myself, but also the people in the office play a hugely important part in providing the information and evidence that we use as part of the accountability and assurance framework, which we now have, and which we meet with the Chief Constable and their representatives on a monthly basis to go through not just the budget, and although there is scrutiny around that, but around performance and about key themes within that. And I hope that I have helped to highlight issues on behalf of the public that where they need greater focus. And I suppose one of those that I would identify would be firearms licensing, where on behalf of the Commissioner, I've taken a particularly active interest in making sure that performance around firearms licensing has had a line shone on it, and a light shone on it, and that we have had improved performance in terms of delivery on in that area. In fact, the force has doubled the capacity within our firearms licensing unit to reflect the demands on that and to try and drive down the times that people were waiting to get shotguns or firearms licenses, and, you know, in a robust, safe way, but make sure that we're delivering the service the public expect in a timely way. So I think that would be an example I would give you of something where I've taken a lead on an issue and sought to deliver it on behalf of the public. But it was a very tough act to follow as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, absolutely.
Anything further, Tracy? No, thank you. Beth, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, congratulations on your re-election, Commissioner. I have a question for you on behalf of some concerns raised with me from the public. Having recently been re-elected, I wanted to offer you the opportunity to respond to some concerns that have been raised about the scope of work, about what's delegated and what's the aspects that you personally can deliver, what the benefits are of having that deputy, what that affords you to do and what that resource is allowing you to do, but also with a bit of reassurance to the public about the costs and benefits associated with your whole team, because it's obviously been brought up fairly recently about the promises made in the budget and whether or not they will be compromised in any way, or if your team is going to have any detrimental impact on any of the promises made, and a little clarity about the scope, because the budget doesn't comment on the costs of your team. Thank you.
So, thank you, Ms McDonald. I'll have a go at answering them and come back if I don't pick up all of the elements of it. So, the central part of, and it sets out in the legislation, is that the deputy can act with all of my powers except appointing, dismissing a chief, The same with Chief Executive. They can't set a precept, and I don't think they can set a police and crime plan. All those things are very central statutory bits to which you would expect I don't need to be done in the course of ordinary duties. And I think that's a central part, I think, of my answer to your question is, I need somebody, I would suggest the public of West Mercia needs somebody to assist in that journey. And using the example of firearms licensing, in the world that policing deals with, it's not right at the top of the list, so therefore it's not always going to make the top of the agenda, or maybe the bandwidth that I would have as an individual, but it's incredibly important. And Herefordshire as an example, a huge number of licensed firearm holders, and a system where we weren't able to provide an efficient, effective process, but not terrible in terms of we were issuing some. It was just huge delays and the like. So therefore, having that additional capacity, for example, to own and to, on my behalf, take forward those issues is really, really important. And linked to that visibility, sometimes you have to turn up to Ross Town Council, and sometimes you have to have those conversations and be there, to which I hopefully work hard to get out and about to do, but I can't be everywhere. So having that physical presence and the ability to dispatch somebody is really, really important. Mark's not full-time. I absolutely agree. A point Councillor Harvey made earlier, it is a significant amount of money, of course it is, and so therefore making sure I get the value for money for it, as in work them hard and send them everywhere, is also at the centre of that. And so I do recognise that it is a choice to be made, and I do think it is in the best interest of me being successful as Commissioner to have that capacity as support. And it linked, I think, to your question, but it's overall, despite there being able to act in my name, I am responsible and accountable for all of it. And so there is never well, the deputy made that decision. I am accountable and responsible for all of it. So therefore, whether it be Mark's predecessor or Mark himself, our relationship has to be discrete areas of responsibility, absolutely, but it is all done in my name. So therefore, I expect that ongoing dialogue with me. A confession to the panel and those watching, I know nothing about firearms. I've never shot a gun in my life, so therefore I don't necessarily understand all the technical detail, but having somebody who's able to dive into it with me and discuss those principles around it is absolutely in the best way, I believe, best way to be able to serve the public. And linked to that, sometimes a deputy, and it can be the chief exec at times, but sometimes a deputy needs to be able to close the office door and go, Commissioner, you're wrong about this. Or more often, John, you're wrong about this. And that is important, I think, especially in elected office where there is just one person, there's not a council or a cabinet. And so therefore having that trusted person with the knowledge and gravitas to help be the check and balance is vitally important. And that's not in the job description, is it? But it is part, I think, in having robust, transparent and open democracy where we're spending not only significant amounts of public money, but being the governance of a really important Category 1 emergency responding organisation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do you have a follow-up question, Beth?
No, thank you for that.
Thank you. John, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Earlier this year, I think I had an occasion to actually talk to Mark about some issues that were occurring in Malvern with mad dogs, or a mad dog, and the sort of danger associated with that. And I'd like to thank Mark for his his assistance and help. But in general, the question I want to put to him at the moment is, in terms of other issues that may arise for, say, in panel members' areas, for instance, where there is a difficulty in resolving or engaging a response with the police, how does he see the interaction of himself with, say, the panel members as a conduit for issues that are not actually being dealt with in Malvern, Wrekin or Worcester, wherever it might be, that maybe there is some lack of response or perceived lack of response, as was in the case that I had earlier in the year. So I wonder if Mark could actually expand on, as a deputy, or even John Campaign himself as the Commissioner, how that interface and how that he sees that interaction taking place, and the accountability to really coming back through to the general public as to if there's any perceived fall off in interaction with the police as to how they would actually deal with that through the scrutiny type of process that we're involved in.
Thank you, John. Mark, I'll ask you to comment, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and nice to see John again. Clearly, one of the roles of both myself and the Commissioner is to be that conduit for issues that are not being resolved or haven't been resolved directly with the police. We have there clearly is a complaints process, and if people are unhappy with that, there's a sort of formal process through which complaints do flow to West Mercia, and then ultimately, if they are not satisfied to the complainant's satisfaction, they roll through to the PCC's office, and we have a review of complaints. We do that as a part of the statutory functions of the PCC's office. But I guess the question is more about the sort of less formal approach to issues not being dealt with. And there have been many occasions over the last 18 months when I've been able to intercede on behalf of councillors, whether they're on this panel or they're on any of our authorities, in order to try and find solutions to problems. And one of the benefits of going out and doing our road shows, earlier this year we had a road safety road show where we toured West Mercia village halls and community centres and took questions from the public. We had operational officers from the police, but often we also had operational people from highways authorities, the relevant one in the area, and were able to directly help resolve those. Sometimes the issue is who's responsible for it, and road safety is a classic example of that. You know, in the public's mind, there's often confusion about who does what. You know, who does enforcement, who sets the speed limits, who does any engineering works on the road, and that's where, in my role, I've been able to help demystify those and to point people in the right direction. Roger's here, I think, today. Roger was, Councillor Evans was one of those who attended one of those road safety focus events, and it was a very useful opportunity where you shared there's a police role and there's a local authority role, and to help the public understand those. So as the Deputy Commissioner, I would seek to continue to do that. I'd seek to continue to be a conduit to help provide advice on what's the right way forward, but also it's that networking opportunity. So it's who I know. So I can pick up the phone to somebody and say, could you look into this matter on behalf of Councillor X or Councillor Y? And I've got plenty of examples of doing that right across the political spectrum as well. So doing that on behalf of elected members, whoever they might be, whatever the party they may come from, and wherever it is in West Mercia.
Thank you for that. Any follow-up question, John?
No, just I wonder if John Campion would say what his perception is of this type of interaction.
Commissioner, would you have a comment?
Obviously, the law says I hold the chief to account, but it'll be no shock to the panel that the chief doesn't do most of the policing here. It's often done in his name, and it's no different in my commissionership. I have to have things done in my name, but that informal ability sometimes to be able to raise things into a large and complex organisation is exactly what needs to happen. I can think of lots and lots of individual issues that are never going to make the press or the press releases or all the other bits and pieces, which are actually, this is happening in this community. Is this what the force thinks should happen? So therefore, that ability to unblock. And sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's semi-successful, sometimes it has no impact at all. But I often think that sometimes that well-intended raising of an issue is what can be unblock it. And I think that definitely does come from personal connection, to which building up that network I think is incredibly important, and Mark is a candidate who comes with that network and a track record of wanting to ensure that it expands to all parts of West Mercia.
Thank you, Commissioner. Duncan.
Thank you. One of the advantages of an open and transparent process is it helps the Commission demonstrate it meets the legal objective of the public sector equality duty. And that in particular for an area like West Mercia, where we have a number of people with protected characteristics, is obviously an issue here. So I'd like to just invite Mark. I mean, it's not your responsibility how you came to be appointed, I appreciate that. But in the light of that, just to talk about how you see equality in West Mercia and the steps that you will take to improve and challenge harassment and any discrimination.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question, and I suppose there's 2 points to that were being made there. One was about the open process, and I can confirm it was my original appointment was subject to a very rigorous and external process. There were two levels of interview. The first one was with a panel that the Commissioner played no part in. It was independently chaired. I was asked a range of very searching questions, and I was there was a quality threshold you had to get through before I was engaged in a second interview. So there was, I can say it was probably one of the most rigorous processes I've been involved with in my professional life in terms of the original appointment. On the wider point about equalities, it is something I can give the panel a whole host, a comprehensive pledge around. I am committed to equality, diversity and inclusion in all that I do. As Deputy Commissioner, I have oversight of the commissioned programme of activities that we are seeking to support, and in that are a whole range of activities that seek to ensure that all members of our community are protected and that they are not victims of crime and antisocial behaviour. I have, as the Deputy Commissioner, I've been out and visited those programmes and engaged with participants in them to learn the sort of first-hand experience of those. So an example, very recently I attended what's known as the Purple Leaf programme, which is seeking to ensure that young people are not victims of sexual abuse and violence. I engage with the provider of that services. I'm always keen to understand what more the Commissioner can do and use the budget to best effect to protect those in our communities. And if I'm reappointed as Deputy, I shall make it my task to make sure that we continue to ensure that all communities in West Mercia are engaged, consulted with and supported so that they can live their lives. So it's very much a core principle of mine.
Thank you, Mark. Now, I'm conscious of time and we have a large agenda, so I'll make the next question the last one, please, Viv.
Thank you to Mr Bayliss for explaining, because there's nothing in this report here that explains exactly what you are about. And that was the one thing that I really wanted to say to you. But you've just explained now what you had to say. If you say to the public, I'm going to see the police commissioner, which I did, I'm going tomorrow to the police commissioner, they say to me, what is that? What is it? So, you know, it would be rather nice if members of the public understood what the Crown Commissioner was. And also, your promise in the budget, I think, was to do that. Make it more clear about what is going on to the public. There weren't very many people at the one I went to at Ludlow. In fact, I think there were about 15 people, that's all evening, which is very unusual for Ludlow, because if it had been more advertised, I think you would have found the place would have been packed. But lots of people said to me, we didn't know anything about it, so that's why we didn't go. So if you could do that, I know you knew, and but the thing with it is, it's the purpose of this report is to enable the members of the Police and Crime Panel to understand about you and I'm afraid it didn't do it for me here. And embracing change and maximising positive outcomes for stakeholders and the community. I'd like to see more of that being done, because I get an awful lot of people that complain about all sorts of things, burglary, drugs. I will still go back to that because we have a real problem in Ludlow, whether the Commissioner thinks we have or not. But I honestly believe that maybe you are going to do some of these things, and it would be rather nice. It's public understanding with the budget as well, because in this day and age, people are struggling for money, and they want to understand why we are paying such high wages to people like you and to the police commissioner. And if they don't understand who you are or what you're doing, then you're not succeeding, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Parry, for the question. I guess the Police and Crime Commissioner is still a relatively new role in British public life. It's 10 years. It's just celebrated its 10th year, and therefore it is a role that is still embedding itself within the British public sector. And so I guess there remains a role for all PCCs to do to highlight what the PCC does and what, as a deputy, I do in terms of how we respond on behalf of the public. And it is still very much, there is still an information giving role there to do. I would say and my experience in the office is over the last 18 months, there's an extensive programme of engagement getting out. I could show you, as I said, I keep a visual map in my office of where I've been in terms of and the events I've done, and that's just one member of the team. But it is a never-ending task, and I guess we need to, and as I said, drawing on 23 years experience as a councillor, you can be a very busy local councillor and still meet people when you go knocking on doors and they say, "Oh, I've never heard from you, I've never seen you before." You know, so despite our very best efforts, there's an ongoing task to be out there to talk to the public. And as the Commissioner said, one of the benefits of having a deputy is that we can do twice as much of that in terms of directly engaging, and I have the opportunity to feed directly into the strategy, the budget, and into the ears of the Commissioner what the public are saying. And so I take my role very seriously in terms of representing the public in all of the decision making that goes on. But I'll try even harder. If I'm reconfirmed, we'll over the next 4 years we'll seek to even double again the effort to get out and meet people across the patch.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. All that remains now is the recommendation that the appointment of Mark as the Deputy Police Crime Commissioner is recommended by the panel. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Noted too. Thank you. Congratulations, Mark. See you around, no doubt. Thank you. Right, moving on now, we go to agenda item 10, which is the Police and Crime Plan Activity and Performance Monitoring Report. Now, the recommendation is members of the panel are invited to consider the report. Now, having considered it, what we'll do is we'll take them in paragraph numbers so we can actually go sequentially down the page. We're not dotting about from front to back. So, paragraphs 5, 6 and 7. Commissioner, would you like to open the proceedings?
If you're running through them by section, no, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much then. So the first one is the West Mercia Police Chief Constable. Would you like to make a comment on that?
Sorry, no, Chairman. I thought you meant. Sorry for confusion. Normally, I would have introduced holistically and then taken questions. But if you're going through section by section, happily take the questions.
I was looking at you introducing it holistically and then going through the questions. My apologies for misunderstanding.
My apologies too, Chairman.
So if we can go back to the normal, if you could introduce the report as a whole, and we'll go down sequentially, as it were.
Thank you, Chairman. So, very grateful to be here and having had the support of the public at the elections. It feels like a long time ago, with the general election in the middle, but I'm grateful to be here and to continue to demonstrate to the panel as to my work as Police and Crime Commissioner. You'll see we have attempted to capture all of the relevant items and indeed included the latest performance metric. We've discussed with yourself, Chairman, and your officers as to how we represent that in terms of including the report. Unfortunately, due to the way that the timing has fallen, the most recent performance, i.e. that would be to the end of June, comes out this week. So you have got a slightly older set of information. But as it comes out this week, it will be on my website next week for those that are interested in the very latest figures. I would just draw attention to some interesting elements, not least of which a little further down around perception and indeed the majority and consistency around confidence in the police. I would also just very briefly draw to your attention within the performance document in relation to drugs, and we had in one of the questionings around Mark talking about drugs offences. There's some really interesting trends, early trends around, for example, drugs offences where action taken, i.e. percentage where offenders have been brought to justice. Year to date, we are seeing, for example, in Shropshire, in about 26% increase in that particular statistic. So, whilst not a trend in the truest of sense, there's some really good signs that some of the investments that the panel have supported in the past are showing actual outcome changes for our communities across West Mercia, and in that particular example in Shropshire. But as I say, happy to answer questions as you go through by section.
Thank you, Commissioner. Right, so if we can start with paragraphs plural, regarding the West Mercia Police and Chief Constable. Do we have a statement to open on this? No? Right. Panel, is there any questions? We've got two callers at two at the moment. John?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's the question I've got is related to what we said at the 7th of February meeting about cybercrime. And there's the wording in the minutes of that meeting said that developments in preventing cybercrime and artificial intelligence would be incorporated into the performance report. And so we're looking at the performance report now, but I wonder what, I do not see any reporting on cybercrime and artificial intelligence in this performance report. Maybe I've missed it, or maybe it shouldn't be there. But I wonder if we could have an explanation as to why it's missing.
Thank you, John. Commissioner, would you like to comment on that, why the cybercrime is missing from the report?
So, forgive my recollection of discussion. So, it wouldn't be in the performance report element. From memory, it was how we included in the ongoing metrics that we reported on. But if I've misunderstood that or we've misunderstood that, happy to pick it up.
Have you commented on cybercrime at all in this report?
I don't think so. Not in this report. No.
Well, perhaps that's an action you could take away if you wish to claim. Thank you very much. Kelly. Sorry, is it? Okay, Nigel, sorry.
Actually, within the performance report, there is a paragraph that said that the matrix is being created. So it's not yet current.
Okay, John. Did you hear that, John? The matrix is being created. Okay. Thank you. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. And I was just wondering, John, the figures for domestic abuse have gone up quite a lot nationally, but certainly in Telford, quite a lot. So I was wondering if you was aware of the cause of that and what you might be sort of doing or have planned to sort of help tackle that for us.
So, Councillor Middleton, it's always an interesting position around statistics around domestic abuse reports, because I don't know whether you would agree with me, but my contention is that there's a huge amount of under-reporting. So any ups and downs are sometimes a bit insignificant, because I think there's a huge number that don't get reported. And I'll ask the Chief to comment, because I think it would be helpful. But my central view has to be around how we prevent it in the first place. The confidence, of course, for people to report it, absolutely, but getting ever greater focus on preventing and stopping the behaviour happening has to be the approach. Because in West Mercia now, I'm really proud that we've got, and Telford is exactly the same, that we have multi-level perpetrator programmes in every area now in West Mercia, so that we have got that ability to refer. But I don't know when we get to a position of being comfortable that the true nature of domestic abuse is reflected in the crime figures. But Chief, I'd be interested in your panel. Be interested in your view on Councillor Middleton's question.
Thank you. Very important question, a very high priority for us, not just because of the effects of domestic abuse normally on the female, at 10-15% is male, but on the children and the lifelong impacts as a result of that. And this, the Commissioner's right, we always have this play around, is the reduction a bad thing because people aren't reporting it, or is it a good thing? There's also the policing survey of England and Wales that does a telephone survey which people consider more accurate rather than just reported crime figures. I can say, using some of the latest data that John referred to earlier, that this year to date we've had 5,539 domestic abuse incidents across West Mercia, which is 11% less than last year. So if people have increasing confidence and do report it, and I do get a sense that people are reporting it a lot more, I'd still say a lot is not reported, then that is potentially a good thing. If you were to see our internal communications and our focus in our performance boards, you will see that domestic abuse is of the highest priority. Only this week we've launched a campaign called Aware, which is how you focus on the child in the domestic abuse incident. You look in the fridge, you look in their bedroom, you take them aside and speak to them. A lot of this is the finding following the murder of Alfie Steele. So we're on it, and I think all my officers consider it a very serious priority.
Thank you for that. I have a question. Paragraph 10, we talk about the number of children ISVAs is reduced by 50% in its quarter, but waiting times are longer in Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin and Hereford and Worcestershire. Is there any reason why there's this discrepancy between the two waiting times? 10.
Yeah. So some of it will be capacity. So I happened to be with the team earlier this week, and capacity is an issue. We are talking sometimes single or very small groups of people supporting what can be obviously a very intense series of support for those individuals. So my contention to you would be it is purely a capacity issue rather than a structural problem. You will also unfortunately see that we will see trends in certain areas. So there might be a certain incident that will lead to an intense period of referrals. But I was really proud when I visited the team, ironically, as I say, earlier this week, to see that the ability to flex the resource around West Mercia was really important. And my plea would be to the incoming government is a lot of my funding, for those of you who were Worcester City Council last night and heard my presentation, a lot of my funding around these commission services, we've done exceptionally well in attracting central funding, which has enabled me to develop such as the ones referred to in paragraph 10, is that that funding might not be sustainable if those central grants disappear. So my request of government is very early clarity about what they will continue to fund around these services, because I know I need to give certainty to my providers, but also have some certainty over the medium term that we'll be able to continue to deliver these really important services, which can have lifelong impact for the individuals who are engaged in needing that service.
I would concur with that, and I think that the discrepancy due to lack of capacity is something that should be addressed, and so we can see how we can provide a better service across West Mercia. And I understand you are trying to do that, but it's something I think we need to address. Liz.
Chair, thank you. At the front end of this item, you sort of prefaced our questioning, with a request that we stepped through the report section by section. This is both to aid the committee, the panel, but also members of the public who may be watching this online live or afterwards. It's really difficult to follow the agenda papers if our questioning leaps around all over the place. And I'm really keen that we do, for reasons of public interest, actually recognise and consider the section here regarding the appointment of a chief constable to West Mercia Police. I recognise there may be sensitive issues which can't be gone into for good reason as to why the appointment that this panel endorsed back in January of Kyle Gordon as Chief Constable for West Mercia Police is not now going ahead. This news broke in June. However, alongside that, we're fortunate to have Acting Chief Constable Murray with us now, and congratulations on your new role with the National Crime Agency. But therefore, as a force, we are expecting to be without an active Chief Constable shortly. My concern is that an awful lot of time, trouble and effort went into the recruitment process, which ended up appointing Carl Gordon. And I'd like to understand where the failings were in that process that prevented whatever it is that is now a problem being identified at a much earlier stage, because having a chief constable heading the force is really important, and I'm sure we're all keen that we have somebody, the right person appointed to the position to lead our officers.
And just a point of clarity, Councillor Harvey. At the beginning of this, with all the confusion we have between the Commissioner and myself regarding the appropriate way to deal with it, I did mention 5, 6 and 7 as being an area to be discussed. Nobody picked up on it. And then somebody went on to talk about sexual violence. So I assumed, erroneously it would seem, that there was nobody wanting to ask questions on 5, 6 or 7. But having said that, for the sake of clarity, Commissioner, could you answer that question, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So I don't accept all of the premises in Councillor Harvey's question, because temporary Chief Constable Murray is appointed by myself, and as I set out in the report, I have appointed Richard Cooper to be temporary Chief Constable when Alex departs. So any assertion that there isn't a Chief Constable is incorrect. The law also states that in the absence of me making that temporary appointment, which is my statutory duty, by the way, that there is an acting Chief Constable. So come what may, there will always be a Chief Constable. But the central point, I think, of Councillor Harvey's question is absolutely the right one, about how we get certainty over the medium term that the right leader is in place to steer the ship through. But just to reassert the fact there is operational command of West Mercia Police that I have ensured is in place and will continue to ensure is placed. I would also, being incredibly careful with what I can say, I would also reassure the panel that when it made the decision in January, it did so with a clean report from the independent person, all the information supplied around the process, and indeed did what it did back in January. Because some unforeseen circumstances have now arisen, doesn't mean that the process was at fault. Now, I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores of that, but there is a contention that you could say that the process has worked. But I'm happy to say that there has been no shortcoming identified in the process. There has been the clean bill of health that was presented to the panel from the independent person back in January stands now. But what I do have is that commitment that I think you also alluded to, Councillor Harvey, is to ensure that we have the right person leading West Mercia Police. And when I go out again before the end of the year, that's exactly what I will be doing. Would I choose to be where we are now? goodness gracious, I would not know. I can absolutely assure you this has my 100% attention and focus to ensure that it is resolved to give the right leader for West Mercia Police and most importantly to the communities who rely on our services.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any follow-up question, Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, just to double check. There are no improvements that you would be recommending to the process that you're planning to follow later on in the year as a consequence of any learning that has been acquired through this process.
I'm bound by law and approved practice as set out by the college APP. I'm also bound by common law, obviously. So there are some elements of the way that we conduct things, i.e., for example, I choose to run a partner panel and a staff forum, for example, that are available within that framework. So there are elements around logistics I would suggest to you I would look to seek to improve, but the process of testing candidates against their competencies, giving them the opportunity to show them in multiple forums, and indeed ensuring that I get to see firsthand how they interact with West Mercia Police's employees, I would always suggest is at the centre of it. But other than some small logistical suggestions, I'm reassured that the clean bill of health that we were given by the independent report and the transparency all the way through elicited the appropriate conclusion. The unforeseen circumstances that are alluded to are exactly that. And will we work ever harder to ensure that we can foresee anything that might be possible? Of course, but I am reassured, as is my monitoring officer, as was the independent person, that we had a good, robust process that does stand up to scrutiny.
Thank you, Commissioner. James.
I beg your pardon, Chair. No, my point was already been answered.
Thank you very much, James. Viv.
I'm sure that John Campion will bring us a good candidate. You have always done that, and I have no complaints with it at all. I really honestly think that there was no question about it. But I would like to ask a couple of things. I really was interested in this report. If people could see my report pages, I've marked off lots of things which I can't ask all of them. One of them is we have quite a lot of knife offences in Ludlow at the moment. We had 3 stabbings in one night.
Viv, I'm sorry, we're looking at 4, 5 and 6 at the moment.
Oh.
That's something that is not within the bounds where we're talking.
Right.
But thank you for...
Is it also got estates in there? Because that's something else I'm interested in.
Well, that as we go forward, we'll pick it up under perhaps
Right.
under.
I'm terribly sorry.
No,
I missed that
not
little
at all. You're very keen.
I was
and
so
quite right
interested
too.
in what everybody else was saying.
Well, you're very
Thank
keen.
you.
That's appropriate.
I am. You should see my report.
Yeah. Right. Pardon. Moving on. Yeah, we've done 5, 6, and 7. Sexual violence. Have you got any more on paragraph 7 till 12? Move on to victim services 13 to 14. Any comments on that? Good. Building a more secure West Mercia, which is 15 over to 16. Yeah, John.
Yeah,
Dan, sorry.
Sorry, don't worry, I can respond. I'm pleased to hear that the funding has been successful. Probably from some of my own experience of trying to provide intervention services for people who are who conduct domestic abuse. I'm just wondering, it's very difficult to somehow get perpetrators to attend programmes in rural areas. And it's been mentioned twice already, isn't it? As one such rural area, I'm just asking, where are these programmes? It's a drive programme, I assume. Where is it actually delivered? And are you actually testing where the uptake is to see that you are able to reach perpetrators who are living in isolated rural areas?
So, Councillor Kerr, absolutely, it's an excellent point. In 2024, we have lots of different ways of interacting, including online with video calls and calls, but some programmes do absolutely prefer in-person. So at the moment, we do see most of the services, using Shropshire Telford as the example, delivered in our urban centres in either Shrewsbury or in Telford. as the contract develops, we will see more delivered in the locality. But you are correct in the first part that perpetrator programs do require the participant to be willing to engage, and that engagement normally comes with the willingness to travel to access them. But there is elements of online. There is elements of being delivered in the locality, but they're an incredibly small part of what we're currently able to deliver. But as I alluded to earlier, we're in the first sort of phase of having the multi-level available everywhere as we seek to recommission and develop and support the infrastructure of the providers to grow. That ability to deliver in the locality will help. For example, there is a possibility of an equivalent of a mobile library type vehicle being able to deliver in some communities, or indeed accessing using appropriate community-based facilities where appropriate. But at the moment, you are correct. The vast majority are not able to deliver out in those communities. They are delivered centrally.
Yeah, carry on, Doug. You've got a follow-up question?
Yeah, just very, very quickly. Can I ask you to keep some data by postcode so you can evaluate somewhere down the line, maybe next year, where the take-up has been and where it hasn't been, so we've got some information. Thank you.
Duncan, you're pinching my questions. Yeah, I think, as Duncan was saying, I think evaluation as we go forward at some point in the future will be valuable for the panel to see how effective it is in going for these perpetrators. Kelly.
Sorry, just following up from earlier on, and talking around perpetrators, I'm interested, I'm trying to do a project at the moment, but I feel there's more value in looking at what domestic abuse looks like as opposed to asking people if they're victims or survivors of domestic abuse and not necessarily recognise that while they're going through it. So I'm working on a project for that, but I think that would also the perpetrators to see their behaviours sort of hold a bit of a mirror. So do you agree that probably the way we work around domestic abuse probably needs to work differently, to be looked at differently, and therefore would you be interested in having a chat about the scheme? I'm interested in starting to look at that and how we speak to people about it.
I am indeed, yep. One of the reasons I will deliver a victims hub during this term is for exactly that reason. We don't always present in an exactly a case study way, do we? That shows all of our characteristics and we just tick a box and it engages. We're all complex human beings, and looking at that complexity is something I expect to see delivered in that victims hub approach. Happily engage either with myself or with my staff to understand your project, because I absolutely agree the many causes of the harm are complex and different and often unique to the individual, and how we support those individuals to see the consequences of their behaviour is academically shown to be very effective in terms of changing that behaviour. For example, the men and masculinity work that now is delivered across West Mercia helps support those who perhaps have been displaying those behaviours, what the impact is. But I would say to you, we need a bit of a reset in our society about how we engage, because it is voluntary at the moment in terms of people choosing to engage. I do think we need a continued adjustment of how we dispose of people in the criminal justice system, not taking away any element of punishment, absolutely, that needs to be there, but also ensuring we're mandating ever greater intervention about fixing the underlying problem. And I look forward to seeing what that looks like from the government's criminal justice agenda as they wheel it out during the rest of this year.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll move on now to road safety. Any points on road safety? Yeah. Roger, Liz.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations on the appointment, and also my apologies to the panel for late arrival. I had some emergencies which needed and delayed my coming. On road safety, I note the Office of the Police Commissioner Road Safety Grant, and some areas that I represent did have a grant from the Police and Crime Commissioner, which we're having a meeting with the Chief Inspector in the next few weeks, and I may be bringing back to the panel at the next meeting. But the road safety, Shropshire Council has declared a moratorium on the erection of any more vehicle activated signs, VAS signs, within its area, and I'm not sure when that will be lifted. Is the Police and Crime Commissioner aware of this and the effect it may have on road safety, and together with maybe other councillors asking Shropshire Council how they can lift that, because there are many parish councils who wish to put up VAS signs using their own money, but all that is now being stopped. Temporarily maybe, but a moratorium. Thank you, Chairman.
So a bit like the international diplomacy, obviously I wouldn't want to tread on the sovereign right of Shropshire Council to make their decisions, but I would suggest to you my humble experience of road safety and vehicle activated signs in this particular instance. The easiest bit is finding the money for the sign. The hardest bit is finding a bit of acceptable furniture to attach it to, but happily engage with Shropshire Council to understand what the blocker is, because as Councillor Evans alludes to, there's often willing partners, whether it be myself or the parish councils, to help fund the installation, including the whatever pole it attaches to, but getting the right support from the contractor to enable that to happen. But happily engage with Shropshire Council to see whether there's anything I can do to unblock it, because they work. VASs absolutely work and are a great reminder to us as motorists as to the speed that we should be travelling, and that leads then those that won't change their behaviour to be targeted through enforcement.
Thank you. Just to, if I can follow in on that as an update, do you have any figures, I'm sure you do, on those that are taken up and those that are fall by the wayside, shall I say? I'm noticing that there are some issues relating to the installation, which is not your concern per se, but other parties' concerns. And I wondered how much money is being, in inverted commas, wasted by not having these VARs in place.
So one of my grant conditions when we grant the money is them proving that they've spent the money. So and so I do know some instances where they get vandalised or broken or indeed otherwise, but I think overall a fairly high success rate. But if there are particular areas, then I'll happily pick them up. But our principle is we need the parish council or whoever it is to own and operate, because we would never be able to have that resource from the centre. But if you think it's a particular trend somewhere, we can absolutely have a look at that, but not something I was aware of.
No, I didn't think it's just this other parties aren't helping. Councillor Liz Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I had a look at the performance data for the last financial year, and it showed that fatal casualties for the force area were up 31%, fatal collisions were up 18%, serious casualties were up 5%, pedestrian fatalities were up 43%, and pedestrian serious injuries were up 23%. Now, it's great to hear about grants, but I wouldn't have got any indication of that in terms of the performance report that we're looking at here. And I'm just wondering what the Commissioner's view is of the underlying factors which are resulting in, on the face of it, these quite serious upticks in road safety incidents on the network for the force area, and whether the money and effort is being targeted correctly to address them.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So the very latest figures, so we see internally the monthly and then the quarterly, as I say, comes out this week and will be published next week. We are seeing a slight change in that trend, so the figures are coming down again, but they are too high is the central point. And we've done a lot of work around this, and indeed on my website there's the notes of the ANA holding to account that we've done with the force explicitly around it. And one of those elements is around how we target individual behaviours. For example, motorcyclists, I think it's over 30 riding motorcycles over 300 cc's are disproportionately represented in those killed and seriously injured figures. And it's how then, not only the targeting of my commissioned activity, but also the work of the Chief Constable to ensure that there's a proper operational response to not only engaging with, but also the right level of enforcement. And I wondered, Alex, whether it'd be helpful you just to set out, using maybe the motorcyclist as an example, what you would do tactically as an operational response to those figures and the effects it would have, for example, over the summer.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, inherent in the question is the seriousness of our killed and seriously injured rate, and we know the impact it has on families and friends across the county and across the country, because so many people travel through West Mercia. You're right, the trend line lately is down, but serious collisions are up. So less people being killed, but seriously injured up. Having had the privilege of working in 3 forces, so West Mids, Met and here, I can tell you the amount of concentration and asset and focus we put on road safety is higher than I've seen elsewhere, but none of that is acceptable enough when you see the the rates of serious injuries. We have, particularly in relation to motorcycles, we have motorcycle intervention teams. All our killed or seriously injured incidents are hot-spotted, time, date, location. We know the busiest roads. That's where we focus on. We focus on prevention and enforcement. And we have schemes that we refer drivers to. I'm also very keen in denying criminals the use of the road, and criminals are probably disproportionately represented in some of our careless driving figures, so we're very keen on focusing on that as well. We've got extensive analysis which we probably might be able to share with you, which breaks down where the issues are, what locations, what the causes are. As the Commissioner meant, motorcycle over 500 cc later on in years, that's where a big focus is, which is why we've got a motorcycle team that focuses in this area.
Right, thank you for that. Moving on, I'd say, bearing in mind it's now 12:21, I know some of our panel have to leave at 1. I would hate to truncate what we're doing, but if we could move on about antisocial behaviour, hotspot policing. Anybody? Oh, James?
Chair, thanks very much. Commissioner, delighted to discover the additional £1 million has been secured. First of all, the specific analysis guidelines that are referred to in the report, can we get a sense of exactly what they are? Because clearly in terms of how the money is then allocated to the 47 hotspots, I'd like to get a clearer sense of exactly what we're kind of looking for in those areas that will determine how that money is being spent.
So the government made this money available, ironically not on a per head but on a force area, so £1 million was how it was spread out to the non-original pilot forces, and I had to then apply for it and say how I would spend it. So so some of the guidelines you referred to are, for example, it needs to be predominantly overtime. So therefore, I bid for the majority of the money to be spent on overtime. That we would then use some more technology. So we now have, for example, apps and smart power apps on the officers' phones, so that they can do the recording of their antisocial hotspotting work automatically. And then lastly, some academic study to know what it is the benefit has been, and indeed so that we can mainstream it. The principle being is that analysis of historic incidents drive the identification of the hotspots when visibility in that hotspot needs to occur. Using Worcester Cross, for example, an example you probably know, Councillor Stanley, been the hotspot for antisocial behaviour forever, at least for the last 20 years, if not longer. Through targeted visibility, the academic work shows that they will see a reduction. As I alluded to, we have got some money for some assessment as to whether it's right, and I shall look forward to seeing at the end of it to see whether it is right, because I think absolutely intelligence-driven policing is at the heart of our work, and making it effective, I think having an academic study to show that, I think is really, really important. But hopefully with 11 hotspots, they are spread across West Mercia, so enough communities will be able to see the benefit of this initial pilot.
Thank you, Viv.
Sorry, did you want to say something else? As I said, we had knifing problems in Ludlow. I believe it was drug related and they were fighting over the territory. There were 3 people stabbed that particular night. I believe the man went home and sharpened his knife up and came back and did it. I'd like to know what is a hotspot? How do you equivalate a hotspot? How do you say this is a hotspot compared to somewhere else? There's 47 hotspots, it says here. And knifing offences seem to be going up quite considerably. It's quite worrying in Ludlow because you get all those old dears who think that it's such a quiet little place. We expect it to be a hotspot when we get, which we have this weekend, which we've got all these concerts on because we've got 8,000 people coming in every night. But we don't expect it on a nice quiet evening in the centre of town in one of the pubs. It's worrying for the elderly people and stopping them coming out to enjoy an evening out. So how do you equivalate a hotspot? How do you say that now is a hotspot? Is it when somebody's stabbed or somebody is assaulted or what? Thank you.
Thanks very much for the question. The importance of a hotspot is that you, as we know, crime and harm is not spread equally over a geography. It always, like so many things in life, tends to concentrate in a particular area. So if we can focus in those particular areas, we know we have an effect because having a uniformed officer in a site creates a deterrent effect and crime goes down. Your question then is how do you calculate the hotspot? It isn't on an individual incident, it's on the prevalence of incidents. So always looking at public space, mostly violence. If there were more violent crime in one area than another area, you can demonstrate it quantitatively. You go, okay, that's the area where if we have the greatest focus, we'll have the greatest impact on violence. So it's by adding up all the harm and all the crime that is across every single area in West Mercia and saying which are the areas that carry a disproportionately high level of that violence and crime. And the other thing I'll just say is that, again, the evidence is very strong. When you focus on a hotspot, the crime doesn't tend to go around the corner. In fact, you have a diffusion of benefit. So with a hotspot in Ludlow, it doesn't mean that the areas surrounding that hotspot get no benefit. In fact, they get an increasing benefit. So that's why the Home Office is so eager to fund policing to concentrate in this area. And the benefit of the app that the Commissioner mentioned is we can say exactly how long an officer has been in that hotspot. And some early analysis we've done here in West Mercia begins to show that it is having a beneficial effect.
Thank you, Chief Constable. Now, next is needs assessment and evaluation to support recommissioning. Anybody got any observations or comments? Moving on then. Regional collaboration, number 25. Any comments? Thank you. Criminal justice, 29 onwards. John.
Thank you, Chairman. We have around the country the prison system's actually overcrowded, and the discussions that have been going on are about letting prisoners out early, using presumably things like tagging in order to keep some sort of sense of where they are, what range of activities they might be involved in, and what other constraints that we need to put on them. So I suppose given that there is likely to be an increase in people being released, there may also be an increase in people not actually going to prison and actually being tagged through the court system. And I was wondering what sort of level of tagging numbers do we have in West Mercia? How effective has that been? And what are the default levels? And what sort of approach have we taken? against the defaulting in the defaulting cases to try and sort of contain the sort of damage or the difficulties that arise from that. And given that we've got this likely increase in people being tagged as a consequence of prison overcrowding and early prisoner release and so on, what has been anticipated that we're going to do with monitoring, controlling the tagging process?
I don't think we know authoritatively what the government are planning precisely, but what I would say is the existing number that that the criminal justice are tagging, etc., is only for previous ideas. But I'll ask the constable or commissioner. Thank you.
So the management of those who are released is a matter for probation service, not a matter for me, but those that seek to offend whilst they're under that management is a matter, isn't it, for me and by extension the police service. And that's my central concern, is that and they have announced already, it's all in the public domain, in September they will do their first tranche of looking at those. I think it's on under 4-year sentences, and look to see, I think it's approximately 40% service, and then they will be released. And some of them will be tagged, some of them will have other measures in place, and I don't have the numbers who are tagged. The reassurance question I will have in that first tranche for the probation service is that they've got a plan in place to deal with those individuals appropriately. Now, some of it's very basic around accommodation to go to. Some of it is very basic about if they're in drug treatment or alcohol treatment, that treatment can continue afterwards. If there are other rehabilitation work, that can continue. Because for me, the very worst will be is a whole cohort of individuals coming out and us not being aware, and there being no good plan in place. Now, I'm quite pleased that the government have waited slightly in terms of till September, so it does give the chance of the system to respond. I do know the figure to which it's likely to affect West Mercia. It's not in the public domain, so I'm not going to quote it, but I am reassured, having engaged with the force, that it is at a manageable level, so that they will then also use their existing processes to work with the probation and other partners to ensure those that might be at risk of reoffending whilst under the conditions you describe are aware of, and West Mercia Police can play their part in ensuring that doesn't happen as far as does. But let's be clear, the prisons are full. They've been full for a while. It's a scandal that's been brewing for a long time. There is a number of prison places being built, but they're not coming online fast enough. The court system is broken. There's no Crown Court sitting in Hereford at the moment, for example. People are waiting far too long for justice, including some of the most complex and serious cases, for example, rape cases taking years to resolve. And what we need to do as a society, I would humbly suggest, is A, it needs some more money spending on it, and it needs a long-term effort focused with that resource and outcome being that justice is delivered. And at the moment, we seem to be lurching from one crisis to next, to which this is just one, I think, side effect of that crisis.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to combating drug
Excuse me,
partnerships.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Carry on.
Noting your point there about the court backlogs, and you've put a point in here about it. It's clear that the Task and Finish group did what it could, but it was limited within its capabilities, and it may or may not have been the most appropriate part to fully address the concerns that you've raised in here. The way the report's written, it doesn't indicate that there's going to be much beyond what you've put in here, which is writing a letter to the Secretary of State. So without having the detail on the situation, it's difficult to understand the holistic consequences of that. It lacks the detail on what could happen, what the expected response is from that, if you are expecting a response at all, and what can be done in the interim to solve it, or is there anything else you can do if the Task and Finish group identified gaps but couldn't resolve them? What happens next, please?
So you're correct in your observation that it hasn't done what I think is a purposeful solution, but it's a group of individuals to which I've got no statutory governance role over. So everybody's willingly volunteering to be subject to the process, which sometimes doesn't elicit where you would want to go. One thing I've tried to get the task and finish to groups is understand what the problems are, and then we can have a go at unblocking them. And we've had, over the time that Task and Finish group was running, judicial capacity, judicial venues, and indeed the, as referred to there, the lack of counsel. I would suggest to you there is a number of things that can make it better. But my comment to the previous panel member still stands in terms of it needs a system intervention. Look at Herefordshire. There is no Crown Court that currently sits in Herefordshire, and that has been the case far too long. And it's things like that that are allowed to stand for too long. Getting more advocates into the system is not going to be a quick job, is it? But are we doing enough today to make sure in 3 years' time there will be enough advocates, for example? If we don't have enough judicial capacity, have we got enough people entering into the progression process to become a judge? And I don't see, and I do think there is a lack of accountability in the criminal justice system, because if you don't like what the Chief Constable is delivering, you can hold me to account here and you can vote me out at the election. Who do you go to if your court service is a bit slow? Who do you go to if the judiciary aren't being speedy enough? And so therefore, I would like to see some greater accountability in these things. If the police station had been closed in Hereford city centre for 3 years, something would have happened, wouldn't it? Because it would have been unacceptable for me not to have acted. But I don't see that happening, clamouring as a result. And I would suggest you justice is the victim to that.
Part of the reason for the question as well is that whether or not the panel can do anything to support your letter.
I'll have a quick look, see whether there is, and I'll share it with the chairman. And again, you know, I know we're an open forum here, but of course all ministers respond meaningfully to all things that are raised by people, but sometimes you do get fobbed off. But sometimes our duty is to write down these concerns, and if others seek to ignore them, that's a matter for them. But I'll happily share the letter because I think it was public, and see whether or not some support might help. It can't do any harm, can it?
Thank you for your assurances of cooperation. Not from you, but from the powers that be. Combating drugs. Any questions? I've got a couple of questions. You mentioned some time ago about officers being provided with naloxone to deal with overdoses. Is that happening?
So yes, there been naloxone within the custody system, and indeed the Chief Constable's approved a pilot in relation to some response teams, and I will look forward to a further report from the Chief to see how effective that's been.
Thank you. And do you find that the intelligence is improving?
Say again, sorry, Chairman.
Do you find that the intelligence is improving on this?
Sorry, I think we've got. So I think you're referring to the drug testing on arrest or the naloxone. Sorry.
I'm looking at the intelligence relating to identification and how we go forward with regard to addressing drugs. Don't worry, we'll deal with the naloxone. Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on to reforming West Mercia. James.
Thank you, Chairman. I note what is said in paragraph 41 and 42. 41, I note about the SNT numbers being maintained, and also previously about the hotspots and redeployment that may occur to combat those. Can I be assured that the SNT teams will be fully manned, both under the existing temporary acting Chief Constable and future ones, with your perseverance? And then in 42, it concerns the digital transformation, and I do read in the performance about digital transformation, but also has the separation from the Warwickshire Police Force been completed, and how is that being handled within the West Mercia, and the digitalisation of the this is the last year, as I understand it, of the upgrades.
Thank you, Chairman. So in relation to Safe Neighbourhood teams and their being fully resourced, I don't want to speak for the Chief, but I think he would happily confirm it is a regular feature of our weekly discussion. I was very pleased to hear when we met yesterday that we will see in the autumn the full complement of PCSOs, for example, to be recruited across the force and to be out there in the public, with an additional course being provided to ensure that the inevitable churn has got candidates to go into. And I know that's down to the personal focus and perseverance of the Chief to ensure that is prioritised. It is a competitive jobs market out there, and ensuring we get the right people into West Mercia is really important, but also in the right places. In relation to digital transformation, yes, we're happily divorced from Warwickshire, and the digital transformation you referred to, that 4-year programme, we are in that final programme and we're working out to see what happens next, because technology doesn't stop after 4 years. It is a huge challenge for us as an organisation, not only from the consumer of available resource, it's also an inhibitor around the officers and staff performing their roles if the technology doesn't work consistently. And I, again, don't want to speak for the Chief, but I think we are equally frustrated that we haven't yet fully got the benefits of that digital transformation, because we are at that last stage of weaning off the old system and moving to the new system. And again, down to the personal perseverance of the Chief, we will see during the autumn the nearly complete removal of what we call brownfield as we transition across to what is described as optimistically as greenfield, which is the new systems. But there will be something else, and we're just at the moment working out what that programme will look like.
Yep, thank you. Come back.
Thank you, Chairman. With the digitalisation, parish councils, of which I'm a member of, and so are members around here, lost out in the reports that were provided to them of what was happening as far as crime goes, of all things within their parish boundary, due to the digitalisation and the new computer system that had been put in. It's been raised here several times, and you expressed that you were not happy with it, but is there going to be any alteration so that the parishes and the towns, the parishes especially, can gather the information of what type of crime is happening in their area, whether it's going up or down, rather than across a much wider geographic area? Parish councillors are very interested and good in their areas, but they want to concentrate on that, and the information that's being fed them is for a wider, much wider area, so it is hard for them to communicate any problems that there are happening. Thank you, Chairman.
I wish I had £1 for every time you'd raise that question at this panel, Councillor Evans. I would have many more pounds than I had now. So I'm still equally frustrated that we don't have it. But in the grand scheme of prioritisation, it's not at the top of that list. Information is available through the police website, Police.gov, I think it's called. Or Police UK, sorry, where you can put your postcode or your community into. But and maybe it's helpful for the Chief maybe to comment, because my expectation as Commissioner is those local officers based in that community are aware of what the crime is and what's affecting that parish, and that they are regularly engaged with the parish council doing that exact job. It might not be in a written report, but they should be able to do that. But also, it's not just about the crime that happens in that community. For example, a rural parish might be disproportionately affected by the crime that's happening in the nearby town or wherever. So having an understanding of what crime is affecting the area, rather than just the crime that is actually happened in that parish. Chief, interested in your views?
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, as you know, I think I'm held to account more than anything else than on the way that the police give information to parish councils, their attendance, and more than that, their meaningful attendance. So I am very keen to work with one of my assistant chief constables to ensure that that happens as appropriate. We're, as you know, rewriting the community charter that will guarantee that. I also share the value and frustration that we all want to see local data really up to date and online and available wherever possible. It is important to us. We've got a digital data program underway at the moment, and I don't think it will. I don't think it's beyond our ability to make that happen. But there's a number of things that transition to greenfield, as we spoke about, that have to take priority at the moment. But having PCSOs, PCs attend parish council meetings when requested and on a regular basis with updates around whether it's knife crime or antisocial behaviour is important to us.
Thank you, Viv.
Thank you. It says here that the core element of the budget investment was on delivering improved visible and accessible policing. I'm afraid that we still only have 2 PCSOs. They work very hard, I must tell you. But how can they be in all these places? It is a very large area that I service on my side of Ludlow, including a third of it. They are seen quite regularly in the town. They try to come to some meetings, but more often than not, in my parishes, which I have 5, they can't get there because they're busy doing something else. It really is worrying that you promised that we were going to see more PCSOs or policing more in our area. I'm talking about up to Bishop's Castle, Bridge North, all round, down as far as the border into Hereford. You know, it's a real big area, and I really must say that they really work hard. I really think the public would like you to improve it considerably. It's not for want of asking. At every meeting we come to, all of us are asking for the same thing. And I've got nodding people here who are saying that they've got the same problem. You're in a town, aren't you? Shrewsbury. That gentleman there that's saying no.
Just down the road.
Yeah, well, it's not very far away. But the thing is, it really needs seeing to. I personally feel very sorry for them having to work the way they are having to work. They can't be in 3 or 4 places when there's only 1 or 2 of them. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you. So you raised Shropshire. Now, for a significant amount of time, many years in actual fact, our level of unresourced jobs across Shropshire have been higher than any other county in West Mercia. The analysis has shown we've largely had the right amount of officers per jobs, but it hasn't shifted the dial. So I'm pleased to say that we have posted, and if you work in policing, you're in a disciplined organisation, you don't move voluntarily. We've posted 14 extra officers into Shropshire, many who have landed on patrol from the Ludlow police station. They're there. Some of them didn't choose to go there, but I can tell you that the impact from those officers who you say are working very hard it's been really positively received. These are not increases to neighbourhood officers, but they're increases to our patrol and response function. And for you know, when you call the police and you want someone to get there quickly, it's the patrol who answer. So I don't really want to distinguish too much between neighbourhood and patrol. When you need them, they should come. So I think, and I hope, Councillor, that is good news. It's come at a cost from other areas. North Worcestershire and other areas have lost staff that have been pushed into Shropshire. So hopefully that goes some way to meeting your expectation.
Can I just say that I had a burglary just up the road from me the other day, and after ringing up, they did come out, and that was a real surprise. They did come and they got the place boarded up. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Viv. Beth?
Thank you. At the start of the Reforming West Mercia section, it does say about how following additional funding and the use of reserves about the budget. So taking us back to the budget that was discussed back in February, my query is about whether this report can clearly articulate where there are departures, positive or negative, from the budget that we've discussed previously, and if that can be, it's more of a request than a question really, where that can be articulated quite clearly in the report. It is so here, but then later in the report there's significant savings. What's significant to you might be different to me, so it's about a bit of specificity and sort of throughout the report. The same is true for when we're using percentages. I'll just put it in here while we're on it. 50% of people said X. Well, is that 50% of 1,000 people, 100 people, or one person? You know, it's how can, if it's possible to just bring in that level of detail, it would provide that context that I think is missing in this report.
We can absolutely work on some additional specificity around those issues. So we're very early on in the financial year, just had the first quarter. Wild variations, as we always get, profile spend against budgeted spend. There are some interesting flashing lights on the dashboard around money, so we've got a very close eye on it, the Chief. And traditionally, we brought more detailed information after the halfway point to the panel, and we'll commit to make sure that we do that in the autumn meeting. It is interesting, we've done a lot of work of making sure that the budget is as robust as possible, but it's exactly as you approved in February in terms of the levels of savings, use reserves, it's exactly as that. I haven't varied it against what you supported. What will be interesting to see is the ability to deliver that against that profile, and that's what's just flashing a little bit on the dashboard. But as I say, we can have some greater detail, as we've traditionally done, once that halfway point's been gone through.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just ask about street rangers, because I think there's been some positive developments in Oswestry with the local bid employing them on a part-time basis. I understand from speaking to bid they were unsuccessful in seeking secure funding from yourself as commissioner for this, but their funding is being given to other towns, and obviously you can understand that in Oswestry people are asking, well, what basis was this allocation made, and in future will any reconsideration be given based on the data? And so speaking to local commanders, I think everybody's very appreciative of the work they've been able to do in Oswestry.
So I'm also a big fan of the Rangers. We don't currently fund, I don't think, any Rangers in West Mercia. There is some discussion going on with Shrewsbury. We did used to fund them, but as to that funding came to an end, and I know there is some further discussions. I have discussed with Adele at the bid in Oswestry around how we can support, and indeed I was out with one of the local police officers in Oswestry not that long ago, where a shoplifter that was identified by the Rangers, and then the police officer I was able to intercept them and work appropriately. I think one of the issues around Rangers in Oswestry was around the time available, in terms of the time of day that they were in the town. Harm being caused, as the Chief alluded to earlier, isn't just in the retail sector. We also have harm and antisocial behaviour associated with the nighttime economy, and some of that is about the level of harm caused. So the level of harm caused by the nighttime economy is higher than maybe the commercial harm caused by the shoplifting. But as I've said to Adele consistently in Oswestry, always happy to have that conversation, and how you join up that partnership successfully I think is really important. And I look at Worcester, I look at Shrewsbury, and I look at Oswestry to show where you see the town council, the bid, the police join together their endeavours. It absolutely maximises the results for our communities.
Right, thank you for that. Moving on to estates now. Helen.
Thank you. I was a little bit surprised to see the firearms range, the planning applications only just going in this month. Has that had an operational impact on us? Because we've not been able to train officers, and if not, is there going to be, are they being trained elsewhere? Is there going to be a cost to the budget?
So the short-term impact is all built within the contingency. So anybody that knows that builds very large buildings in what is essentially the green belt, at the same time as the planning authority is trying to take away our status as a developed site, is always fraught with some complexities, but the operational arrangements that the Chief's got in place to use our existing facilities and access to others is continuing. There is a number of challenges to building Hindlip. and so we always recognise that there would be some variance in the scheme, but it's not a sustainable one in the long term. So therefore, my reassurance that we continue to progress as to the preferred tactic of the Chief Constable, which is to build our own range, is progressed. So I'm reassured at the moment, and I've had reassurance from the Chief that his operational requirements can continue to be met in the interim.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I notice that in paragraph 43 you refer to LED lighting, something I'm quite well known for, I think, on Shropshire Council as pushing for. But I was surprised to read that, and thinking about it, I cannot see anything in the paper before us about climate change. Have you any aims? Has the police any aims in reaching the national targets and maybe local targets concerning climate change and facing up to it? I noted that you are doing LED pilots and then looking at installations in Worcester and Telford divisional headquarters, but where are we with the West Mercia facing up to the challenge that we all are facing, and increasingly so, as was highlighted in some of the news broadcasts this morning about the number of hot days and the lower number of cold days? Thank you.
Really disappointed, Councillor Evans. You know, in my previous police and crime plan, in my election pledges, just reducing the environmental impact of policing is absolutely at the centre of that. So yes, the pledge is there. We've reported back a couple of times in the different activity reports. You're correct. We've done a number of things, whether it be improving how we're greening the fleet in terms of reducing carbon with the offset that we've been doing, the reducing the reliance on non-LED lighting, a whole raft of different things, all the way through to how we procure things, so ensuring that the environmental elements are included within our procurement chain as well. Playing our part is a really important part of that. So absolutely been there. It was in my last police and crime plan. It was in the pledges that I've just made at the election and will be in my next one. I think the biggest way that we can do that is energy. Not only the energy that we use to run our buildings, which isn't as efficient as it can be, but also the energy that we use doing the million-odd miles that we do in and around West Mercia. The infrastructure required to do that and the capital cost to provide the vehicles is quite significant, but I'm at an advanced stage with the force to agree how over the next 10 years we would make that happen in West Mercia. But the Chief and I are both committed that that won't be debilitative in terms of resource to stop us doing some of the other things as well. In terms of the deployment of technology, my view is we should never be quite at the forefront, but maybe we shouldn't be lagging in the way we have been perhaps in the last decade. So being comfortably in the middle, taking the best practice that others have found and deploying them is our strategy. But it's absolutely there, consistently there, and I am of course frustrated that we haven't done more, but I am also reassured that we are making progress.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Right, moving on to financial management. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. As a new member of the panel, I hope you'll forgive me if this question has been asked many times before, but I note that the Blue Light Hub is going to be completed in Redditch in October of this year, and residents are often querying why we don't have any holding cells there and why officers are still having to take prisoners to Kidderminster when we've got a new facility. And I'm just wondering, what is the thinking behind that, and are there any plans to change this, please?
So the provision of police custody in the last 20 years, in the last 10 years, has changed considerably. Old enough to remember in the noughties when the police custody was closed in the old police station in Redditch, because the demand isn't there in terms of the requirement. A lot of police work doesn't require police custody, and for good reason. For example, 20 years ago we would be using police custody as a place of safety for a child. For example, that no longer happens quite rightly now. Police custody being used for somebody in mental health crisis incredibly rare now compared to where it used to be. So absolutely the right thing to do. There was also the changes in legislation around how an individual can be disposed of in the criminal justice process rather than using police custody. It's also violently expensive. The cost of providing police custody at Redditch would probably increase the financial requirement by in excess of 50% just from the capital, let alone the operational requirements to staff it. The panel has considered HMIC's inspection of custody a number of times over the year, and you will know that the draconian and indeed quite right high standards of custody are incredibly expensive to staff as a result. But what I would say, and it is the operational advice of the Chief Constable, is that the custody provision across West Mercia is appropriate. Would we design it exactly where it is if we were doing it from a blank piece of paper right now? No, we wouldn't. And if we look at our other forces, most similar or neighbouring, you would see that they have considerably reduced the number of custody blocks over the period of time, whereas in West Mercia we haven't. The one in each of the LPAs tends to be the model, and how it it's an area where we will continue to keep it under review, and indeed if it is something that needs to be developed, there are options on the existing site, either there or elsewhere in north of Worcestershire, but at the moment it's absolutely the right thing to do, and the new police fire station in Redditch I think cements policing right at the heart of the borough for generations to come, and I'm really proud to be doing that in line with Hereford and Worcester Fire and Rescue Service. And actually it's the second joint police fire station in West Mercia, and it's ironic that they're in neighbouring towns.
Thank you. No other questions. We'll move on to communication and engagement. Beth?
Thank you, Chair. My question starts off with the thought of whether you're happy with the numbers of the engagements that are going out there so far.
So it's an interesting period, isn't it? Because I had an election period to where the pre-election period rule counts, quite rightly, and we've had a general election. So we have had a period to where engaging in the way I would normally do hasn't always been possible. But when I look at the targeted approach to which we are now doing it compared to when I started 8 years ago, yes, I am, but there is a whole lot more that we can do. Some of the pledges that I made in the election, I know it will take a strategy to deliver, not least of which hearing those that are seldom heard, but also the advocacy element that I've pledged as part of that, and that means engagement in a different way. It's not just because Councillor Kerr's on the panel now, but using an Oswestry example, recently I used a focus group in Oswestry to do with a group associated with Oswestry Pride in a setting that we perhaps haven't done before, a meaningful focus group as opposed to either a public meeting or a consultation in a traditional questionnaire. And it's how then in this term I re-challenge my team and myself as to how that engagement happens, because gone are the days, and very pleased to happen, that we broadcast only. We also have to ensure that those views that aren't currently being represented are heard, but also the advocacy element. I'm very keen to ensure influences not only the police that I'm the governance for, but also the wider services that our society consumes.
The reason for the question is that there's a variety of things you've presented in the report where you've had X amount of people attending, and it's whether you expected that many people, more or less, was it as expected? For one of them you say that there were 4 events, in total 55 people attended. The amount of time it took to do those events, would it be better that those resources are deployed on, say, a door knocking exercise? Would you reach more people that way? And it's about getting those unheard voices that you just said. What are the obstacles that, have you had any consideration of what the obstacles are that prevent attendance at events, or that are in the way of people speaking to you and your team and your and the wider police force, generally speaking, getting, like Viv said a few times today, about having that exposure to people and giving that reassurance. So it's the same is true for the newsletter. 2,000 people roughly have access to the newsletter. Is that 2,000 out of 10,000, 100,000 or more? And is that something that could be better advertised? What are the obstacles for people getting information about what you and your team are doing?
So not represented in the report, but for example, we now also do vox pop style engagements where I will run at the beginning of formal meetings. I like to do a victim's voice where we will go out and capture a victim's voice or a view of somebody, anonymise it, and represent it at the beginning of the meeting, not for us to analyse, but to set the tone of the meeting. We alluded earlier, sometimes we will set up a public meeting and get very little engagement at it. There are always the whys and wherefore, but some people will want that. But I also recognise that we have to get the other channels working more effectively as well. You're not going to see me dancing on TikTok, I don't think, anytime soon, but making sure that we have got those other channels effectively working is absolutely important to me. As to whether the numbers are right in terms of the newsletter and Neighbourhood Matters, I'm not certain as to whether it is enough yet. I've seen some quite impressive growth since we've been doing it, but sometimes, and we saw it with the force, that you go so far plateau, and it's how you then have the energy to go to the next step. And my head of comms behind you, in fact, is listening intently, and I know we debate often about how we try different things and see what works, what doesn't. But we're very keen that what might work in Shropshire won't necessarily work in Herefordshire, and how we ensure that we have that multi approach. But the very last bit is how the Chief Constable supports me in my mission. There's been Chief Constable for quite a long time in terms of well established in society. Police Commission's only been here just over a decade, so how the force help me in my statutory duty of engagement, ethically and independently, of course, is also really important. And I'm grateful for Alex to engage in doing that. And indeed, I think we have seen some joining up of intent where it's in both of our interests much more meaningfully. But there is more to do.
Thank you.
And just a last point is my brother's a vulnerable adult in society, but he does have the PCOS's business card on his PIN number. Whether they work for the force anymore, I'm not sure, because it was a few years ago. But that was part of a involvement in the community, going around and knocking on doors, and that was very effective for him particularly. So it could be, again, different people within the community require different levels of support. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. That image of you dancing on TikTok, it will live with me. Just to make a point, we are targeted here till 2 o'clock. It's now 1:05, and we are governed by being quorate. And so I see people have, with their time being precious, have left. So that's okay. But there will come a time, perhaps, if people leave, then we will not be quorate and we'll have to stop. Having said that, shall we move on again now to assurance? Oh no, we've got, sorry, I beg your pardon. John, I beg your pardon.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Further on Beth's questioning, the 55 people who attended events, I mean, it feels to me that that is actually inadequate, an inadequate result for the possible energy expended. And I'm wondering how did you go about the level of engagement in order to communicate with people, to set up the communication process? Because we've had retail crime that you've looked at, for instance, in Malvern, Ludlow, Ross-on-Wye, and the various things like that you want to actually communicate out to the community. So is there anything you can do differently, such as, is there a role to engage, say, the officers in the district, borough, city councils? What sort of levels of communication could you improve with the parish councils in order to try and to get those messages out that you want to get out? Because if you're only ending up with 55, it's not, to me, it's not a significant enough number. So I would have thought you would need to and want to communicate a much larger number of residents.
So the first principle being us shifting to try and do an intelligence-led engagement. So, for example, where we've seen retail crime, using that example as an issue, engaging with that community, as it were. And so using that as the premise as to why we're going, and then doing preparation to engage with the different organisations. it's quite hard to do this and not look at the metrics in volume, because what we aren't able to show through what we're the reach. So let's say, for example, those 55 people that you alluded to, 10 of those might be the biggest influencers in their community that run either a notice board or a Facebook group or in a, from the bid or whatever it is. It's how then I give the right support with the right information at those events to be able to share the information more widely. And it's no different to the Chief's mission with Safer Neighbourhood teams, making sure there is good advocacy of the issues, but also what's happening as a result. But we're always up for suggestions. So if there are certain things in Malvern Hills that you or your colleagues are up for, we are absolutely up for trying it. We're trying to move away from the bigger meetings because it tends to be the loudest voices getting heard rather than the ranges. So I've got no problem with smaller settings. It does take some effort to be able to do it in those circumstances, but I think very worthwhile. And I'd use an example recently earlier in the year in Ross-on-Wye. Real concern about the spike in shoplifting there, but a meeting with traders in that event. There was maybe 20 people in the room, not representative of the town, is it, of Ross-on-Wye, but absolutely representative of the business community who'd got that concern. So whilst numbers are helpful, always keeps Mrs. Clive happy if I've got the right number consistently in there, but I think we've got a job to do to show reach as well in this instance rather than just volume. But anybody with suggestions, we're always happy to receive them.
Thank you, Roger. Roger, your question, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if it's the right place for this or not. It is about retail crime and shoplifting, but it may be better in the next section, more to do with performance, when I may be able to raise it there.
Well, I don't think there's any more questions about communication and engagement, so perhaps we move on to assurance and accountability then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I note that in the performance tables that are circulated up to the end of March, there are several tables there which jumped out at me as being interesting. One of them was shoplifting in Shropshire. I looked at the shoplifting in the different parts of the area covered by the West Mercia, and I'm amazed that in Shropshire it has increased by 47%. An horrendous number when one looks at the national context that's being pushed on that. I understand what was said earlier on about the number of roles and the number of people, staff working in Shropshire, but a 47% is a tremendous increase when we're looking at other parts of the West Mercia, talking about 20% or lower. So is there any reason for that? Is there an investigation? And then whilst I'm talking, Chairman, would like to talk about public contact and call handling. And I note again on page 16 of the report, it shows that Shropshire, the West Mercia attended within a target of 20 minutes being the lowest, somewhere around about 70%. And again, on the grade 2 target, again, Shropshire is again one of the lowest there of all. So is that because of it? And then finally, the time to answer calls, especially on 101. Is there any comment you can pass on that? Sorry to bring it all into one, Chairman, but trying to save a little bit of time.
I thank you for that. It's very helpful. Commissioner.
A range of issues, so taking them from the last one. So 101, you know consistently that we have been having challenges with 101. So additional resource and focus and technological innovation, trying to drive down that number. It's a long way from where we'd want it to be. It's regular focus and feature. In relation to shoplifting, we've seen, as you would have read in the national press, a spike in shoplifting everywhere. Here in West Mercia, there are an 11 town centre teams set up as part of the budget. They're already working, and Shrewsbury being an example of where we are seeing those successfully drive down by targeting those prolific offenders who are doing it and working with retail stores to target hard and where possible. I am reassured that the police system, not just in West Mercia, in the UK, has responded to the spike and is getting it back to where it should be. And the first one was about response times. As the Chief alluded to earlier, the conclusion that we have come to is that the resourcing of the model, despite being in line with the science behind it, wasn't working. So therefore, those additional bodies going primarily into South Shropshire, the expectation is that the Chief will deliver the improved performance. And, you know, using an example, there wasn't regularly a patrol team from Ludlow. And my expectation and the Chief's reassurance is now with those additional resources that there will be out of the all 5 shifts a patrol from Ludlow, for example, and that will drive up performance. And if it doesn't, the Chief and I will discuss it, and we will do something in addition to that, because my expectation is clear that all communities get the service within the standards that we set out, and clearly they haven't been in this case, so action has been taken.
Thank you. I notice we've strayed into the force performance reports somewhat, so we might as well continue with the force performance. Any other questions on the force performance? Fine. The West Mercia Perception Survey. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was struck by the figures to do with public confidence drivers in the full year performance report, which says that there's been a statistically significant decline in all the public confidence drivers in the police since 2021, with the one entitled West Mercia having a good reputation amongst local people having decreased most markedly by 11% down to 75%. And I just wonder whether, both in terms of the numbers of members of the public who are attending engagement events, and also the comments elsewhere in that performance report which query whether the reduction in the number of reported crimes is reduction in the number of crimes is actually because crimes are not being reported as much as was previously the case, are in some way all linked. And, you know, public confidence in the police, lack of engagement when the opportunity arises, and oh, well, I'm not even going to bother to report that my allotment shed has been broken into and my lawnmower stolen, you know, are all kind of connected, which, you know, if they are, is a bit concerning. And how do we turn that supertanker around?
It's a very large and broad question, so forgive if I boil some of it down, but I've just set out in my re-election as to what I think is the prescription, and one of the strands is about how we police with the community. No disrespect to any senior officer that might be present who will rightly be focused on the risk and harm in our society, but also we need to ensure that we have got policing based at the heart of our community. And so part of what I think is the prescription for it is that more of our police activity is done in that community, because I do want them to see the excellent work that they do. The privilege of being commissioner is that I do see a lot more of it than the vast majority of the public. Some of it is very secret and sensitive, but the vast majority of it isn't. And how we ensure that the public know what is being done in their name more, I think, a central chunk of that is down to relationship. Policing can come out of the shadows and can be in plain sight more of the time than it is at the moment. So having the confidence that when somebody does report that their bike's been pinched, that something will happen, that a low-level issue will get a proportionate and appropriate response. And I do think that is a further development of our policing model, and indeed that's why in the development of my police and crime plan, the tactical operational response to that, when we get to it in the autumn, I would expecting to see how that will come to life, because I think the community don't recognise the record number of police officers. Councillor Harvey, is just one thing that they haven't got the confidence in the system, so I want them to know that they will get that, and I think they need to see more of them to make that happen.
Follow-up question?
Yes, actually. I mean, I agree with what you said there, Commissioner. But I think I find in talking to people that there is a general lack of understanding of how policing is being delivered these days and how that has changed. And, you know, people say, oh, I want to see the Bobby on the beat. I want to see the PCSOs sort of walking around my neighbourhood. You know, they don't see all of the connectivity. I mean, we've got the digital project on elsewhere on our agenda, and I really hope we manage to get to it, because I think that's a hugely important investment, and I think it was important for this panel to support the additional rise in the precept to enable that investment to continue, because it's doing policing differently. But I think getting that message across to people about how policing is done differently, and that they shouldn't necessarily expect to see policemen in uniforms walking about, but that the whole system is connected up through 111 and or 101 and the PCSOs and the kind of community watch stuff, and, you know, specialist officers and digital activity going on behind the scenes to, you know, sort of assimilate data and identify how to target resources more effectively, is how the 21st century policing is being undertaken. And, you know, I try and do my bit as a councillor, try and do my bit on social media, but, you know, it seems like there's a mammoth job to be done and a much more coordinated effort to be done in terms of getting that message out there.
We have agreement. Thank you. Moving on then, as I see no more hands, the HMI inspection reports. Any comments on that? Viv?
All I can say is the inspection report is not very good. It's a cause of concern, it says. West Mercia Police needs to improve its work and its serious and organised crime partners, and use its information and resources to tackle serious and organised crime efficiently. That's not very good, actually. And I want to know what's going to be done about it, and can we have a report next time you're here about what you've done to make things a little bit better?
Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman. Just interested, Councillor Parry, obviously you will have reviewed the HMIC report that you've got the concern about, because it's all in the public domain. I just wondered if there was a particular bit you'd like me to focus on when we come back with that further reassurance in the next activity report.
The mic on, please.
Keep telling me things about Ludlow that aren't there every time I come to one of these meetings. I would like to see you admit that things are going on in Ludlow, and some of it is serious crime. People are coming in from Birmingham and Wolverhampton, and the crime situation is not very good. You know, I mean, it's you know, I know we're only a small town as far as other places are concerned, but I really would like to see when my other councillors, on most of the parish councils and the town councils I go to, are complaining all the time. So, you know, it would be rather nice to have your report is very good, and I must admit I have read right through it all and marked off quite a lot of stuff. But it just worries me that we've got someone who is an inspection report who is saying that we're not doing what we should be doing.
Thank you, that's really helpful. I've had the benefit of reading the full HMIC report that you refer to. It's available publicly on the websites and been referred to in the media. I don't recall, I don't think there was any mention particularly of Ludlow, but if you get a chance to read the report and there's something particularly you want me to draw out, happily do so. But Chairman, if you would like some further reassurance over the scrutiny and other work that we've done in the next quarterly report, we can absolutely do that for you.
Not just mentioning Ludlow, I'm mentioning all the other towns and all the other county councils that are here from other places that have got the same worry. So it would be rather nice if we have something that tells us how you're going to improve the inspection report. Thank you.
I don't think you can improve the inspection report. You can improve the outcomes. But yeah, so I think that's a good idea. That we do ask for a paper on that, please, Commissioner, as to how you are addressing the apparent shortfalls, as stated, with regards to the HMI report. Thank you. Is that, yes? Sorry, yes. It's all right. So we're doing that. Any other questions? We've got Nigel. There you are.
Yeah, Councillor Parrish probably asked most of the question. It does cause me concern that when the inspectorate come up with something that they want to check, and then the force gets caught out and is found to be inadequate, it tends to suggest that there isn't an overview scoping or somebody looking at these things anyway to either preempt or to have an overview at all times. This is a serious and organised crime, is not criminal damage or anything like that. This is real serious stuff, and I'm surprised that the force was caught out by not scoping and having an idea about it anyway.
Again, I think you're right there. I think that the way we aim, I will ask you to aim the report, is to what the situation is, how it can be alleviated, and are there any underlying issues that need to be addressed within the force?
So just very briefly, I know you're conscious of time, because the question that's just been asked is the right one in terms of why weren't the early warning processes in place to identify this shortcoming, and that's of course been the subject to my scrutiny. But the other bit I would add is the new HMI has got a different focus as to how these inspections now run. Their emphasis on the 4P plans, for example, and particularly the partnership element, has shifted significantly. West Mercia was in the first tranche of those inspections and hadn't had the benefit of the new focus within them. But that doesn't change the veracity of the conclusion, and as I alluded, happily bring back the detail. I have already responded as set out in the response to the Home Secretary with the letter, and if it isn't on the website, it will be in the next couple of days. It does contain most of the detail that responds to the recommendations, but as I say, happily do a more fulsome response in the next report.
Yeah, thank you. I think what you just outlined there will be helpful as maybe a preface to the report of how it's changed, the nuance, and where we are now in this new world.
It's a good thing, because it means a new eyes looking at this differently, and we need to do that all the time with everything that we do.
Well, I agree, and what will hopefully, I don't doubt it will be coming from the Commissioner, and it'll be something we can scrutinise and look at then, and if there are any perceived shortcomings, we can feed them back at the next meeting. So that'll be next meeting. Next meeting, Commissioner, for the report. Would that be appropriate? Thank you. So next meeting, Carol.
Thank you. I have read the full report, which you probably expect. What I haven't had time to do, and I think would be a really interesting background, is to understand the other tranche 1 forces that were inspected and actually have a comparison to their report, because obviously whatever's identified does need to be put right, but I found reading the report that the context was lacking compared to other areas. So I think that's just a really important thing to balance out. Yes, we've got to improve, but actually it's hard being in the first tranche and what issues were identified. So I would find that really helpful if you wouldn't mind including it.
So absolutely, we can include that very, very briefly. The element is around the 4P plans, so the partnership element of them. The difference was we as were weaker, so therefore we fell foul of what we felt, and it is absolutely the judgment we accept. Others have fought it, but we absolutely get that. But the element is around partnership. The theme is partnership working and the effect of that on reducing serious organised crime.
Thank you. I don't think there's any more questions on this paper now, this report now. Am I correct? Okay, yeah. We are nearly 1:30, out of here by 2, otherwise we get evicted. We've got 3 reports to look at. One is digital, one is to do with the work, well, the work programme's ours, so we've got to put some time in for that. But the other one that we look at is budget metrics. So, do we consider that the digital one should be pushed up the list to be addressed next, Or, yeah? We all in agreement with that? Yeah? Okay, we'll go to, and again, now, as it's a single item, we can go through as on maths on one page. So we look at page 109, agenda item 13 is digital services return on investment. If we run out of time, you're probably going to find the metrics report and the other report relating to the Police Commission, your annual report. So, yeah, we had it before, so, yeah, so not so worried about that as such, but I think if we go to digital now, because it seems to be a bit of a hot spot, and we may have to put back the budget metrics to the next meeting, depending on how we get on with questions on this one. So, agenda item 13, page 109, if we could deal with that now, please. Questions? If there are no questions, I'm just wasting my breath. Nothing on digital. Okay.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that it's really helpful, I think, that we've got this as an update on what's happening on digital. I think the Budget Task and Finish group really felt that the investment that's been made over the last few years in building up this capability for the force is really important, and it goes back to my point about doing policing differently, and it's part of taking a 21st century approach to policing, and also being able to integrate information that's coming from other sources and combine it with police-owned data, and deriving improved intelligence from that as a consequence. It's really good to see the progress that's been made over the period of sustained investment in this work, and I'm hugely supportive of it and really hope that it continues to deliver fruitful outcomes.
Thank you. Yes, and I think the digital age, as it were, which we are in, I think it's an opportunity for the police service to be able to communicate more effectively, as you were outlining earlier, so that we are not just looking for bobbies on the beat. They drive by in cars, they don't do anything type scenario, that we actually educate the people who are under misconceptions. I think this is an ideal opportunity to how we address that. Right, so we go back to item 11, the annual budget metrics report, page 47. Do we have any questions on this? Yeah, Carol. Would expect nothing less.
Thank you. I thought it was really good to see the budget metrics as an overview. I think it's really, really helpful. A small request. So the data source column is potentially a very duplicating column down the page. If we could move that over and put it maybe in the same column as the key performance indicator, I think myself and potentially maybe other panel members, if I dare speak on their behalf, would find it really helpful to have an overview column for the year and then the quarterly update column, so we can actually track back. But I think the balance of topics, I think, was a good decision by the budget group, because we've obviously got things in on performance, we've got your sustainability and the financial position, as well as looking at the different rates of crime. So I think it's a really balanced dashboard of topics. So I thought it was really good. That's my only observation, is I'll be flicking back through every copy. It would be really helpful to just have an overview of the year on the page with the quarterly position. But thank you for working on it. I'm grateful.
The mischief means to me that we ought to rejuggle it if you can start to compare apples with apples. But I'm incredibly grateful actually for the working group to help clarify what is helpful to the working group, because we can adjust around the column. I think that's not very straightforward. But getting that central set of information that you want has been a long time coming. So grateful to hear it.
Anything? Sorry, John.
Yeah. Maybe I've not paid a lot of attention to this as much as I should have, but when I was reading through some of the wording, a lot of the discussion is in terms of percentages. So, for instance, in violent crime, violence with injury offences, I've seen a 7% reduction in 23-24. And I think that the question that comes to my mind is, well, 7% reduction, is that good or bad? what is the actual number that's reduced by? What's the reference point? Because percentage doesn't actually tell you really any detail about that. It just tells you that there's some sort of reduction. So the reduction could be 7% on 10,000 or 7% on, 50, whatever. And there is a big difference, I think, there in terms of the qualitative understanding of it, because the quantity is not actually specific enough.
I think that's a, sorry about my butt in there, Commissioner. I think that's a valid point. I mean, throughout your report, I found that as well. It's a percentage of what's the baseline, as it were. Thank you.
So one of the joys of doing this, sorry, I'm answering Mrs. Clive now for Miss Clive, but one of the joys of doing this was extracting the information we already give you. So the information you want that you refer to is in the performance report, and I think it's 400 or 500 in the number version, the volume version of the percentage just referred to. But it was help members of the panel look and see where they might then want to look in the performance report to get the number.
I think that would have been helpful if that could have been referenced. Looking at this as, Carol.
Just really want to come in and clarify, because the performance reports with all the graphs on, I think you've got some printed out, Roger, there, comes out all of the time, but people didn't like looking at all of that data. And so this was really not to provide an obscure number, but to enable trends to be analysed as to whether things were improving. So I totally understand not knowing the numbers or the extent of an improvement, but actually to me, if you're telling me there's a 7% reduction, even if that's only one person, that is a small reduction, but it might be 100 people. So to me, the trend was going in the right direction, because all of the data about performance, the rates of crime, how quickly the responses are, is all within these huge performance documents that look like that and are all colour coded. So it is actually looking at another document to support this one if you're interested. And that was where we got to with the consensus opinion of the panel, that didn't want lots of data.
Thank you, Carol. That was my point. If we need to refer to another document to make sense of the percentages, I think that needs to be referenced or attached or something. Yeah, thank you. I'm obliged for that, because at least we can get some context if people want to delve further. Right, we're now at, we finished the metrics report, I think. I think the end of term report, I think, has been seen before. Briefly, are there any, I don't see any remarks coming out of the end of term report? Councillor Harvey?
Yes, I'd like to welcome it. It's a really attractive document. I think it gives, it's easy to engage with. I think members of the public will be able to understand it. And I think the variety of graphics and the way that the information is presented in different ways comes across very well, breaks it up nicely, and I think the Commissioner rocks a turtleneck.
Fine, I couldn't possibly comment. What I would say is that this was the matter of some discussion whether it was included as something from the Commissioner, and I said it provides a context of what his tenure has been, and I think you're quite right. It's a good document. It does show the successes we're going back going forward. So thank you for that, Commissioner. It's very good. Carol.
I want to echo everything Councillor Harvey said. I thought it was a really good report, a really good summary, and I thought it showed the total breadth of topics that you covered, the roles that were involved, and all the interactions with people over that period of time. And when we have people who say they're unsure what the PCC does, potentially they need to read the report, was kind of where I got to for your office as well, because obviously it is a whole team of people. And the stats are the stats. You can make them good, you can make them bad, but I thought it was a really good overview that I think I'd really like to see it out in more places, really, because I don't think it gets publicised greatly. I don't know how we can help you with that, if we can. But
well, I think, as I said, it was something that was discussed as to whether it would be valuable, and it has proved to be valuable. So it was good that we brought it to the panel last time and they agreed it. And I agree that the more people understand, back to my point about the police themselves, how they are operating and how they can operate. I think this is an excellent document to show the public, and I would welcome it being advertised more widely, so that people can actually get an understanding of what actually happens. Are there any? I think we've come to the end of the morning, as it were. All we've got left is a work programme. If the Commissioner, Chief Constable, etc., would want to stay to listen to our work programme, delighted to see. Oh, you're going. Right. So, if we can start to look at the work programme, please, councillors. Yeah. Yes. Congratulations and all the best going forward. So we have just gone through the 25th of July, as I mistaken. The next panel is on the 16th of September, and you'll see there we've got the activity monitoring report, quarterly budget monitoring, annual reports on complaints, work programme, and now the HM inspection. Do we see that as being an onerous agenda for the day?
I would think that, given how long your quarterly reports just took, I would say that.
Say no.
Given how long this takes, I would think it's enough.
Yeah. So the wise person to my left has suggested that as it is at the moment, with the additional HMI report, would be sufficient for that day. Duncan.
Just a question. I'm new to it. Maybe a stupid question. Do we ever?
No stupid questions. Only stupid answers.
Has the Commissioner ever done something like a corporate risk assessment and shared that with us, so we can just see, you know, in terms of overall, these are the areas of high risk they perceive going forward, and these are, and I think that'd be quite a useful document to see. I don't know if it falls part of the work programme or not.
Perhaps it's something you could raise next time, because it's something that I think the Commission needs to comment on rather than us foisting it upon him. So if you could raise that as an agenda item for you next time.
Yeah, I thought I'd raise it here in case it's already been done and I wasn't aware of it.
No. All information is good information. Thank you. Right, so we've set on the 16th of September as being as is in the paper, but with the HMI report from the Commissioner. We now look at the 6th of November. That's quite light, isn't it? But with some potential items. So if we could look at the potential items going forward. We've got the activity monitoring report, and then we get a number of issues. Rural crime, well, I won't read them out. If you look at them, we've got the update on the criminal justice system, which is very germane today. Anybody want to give an opinion about which one or two they'd like to see from that list of 7 or 8? Do we need an update on rural crime? Yeah? Yeah, hang on. So if we include rural crime then. Sorry, Liz.
Yeah, I think I requested that the harassment of women and girls be something that was put on some time ago, and I think, you know, it's come to the fore in the press recently as being, you know, a national epidemic. So I think it would be good optics for the panel to take a look at that and see what's going on across the piece.
Yeah, forget the optics. It's good. It's a good practice to do.
Indeed.
Yeah. So we'll go for harassment of women and girls.
That might be enough, Chairman.
Might be enough.
Will you have your routine report?
Yeah, routine. Yeah, that's true. So what we got there, we got the offenders to justice outcomes, the drug partnership, which we had today. It's recommended that goes to 23rd November. So that's something we could consider there. So the update on the progress of combating drugs, we'll put pencil in for 23rd November. It's got to be updated twice yearly. ICT improvement, again, that could be something for November. And then we're looking later in the year for criminal justice, which is something that raised its head today as well. update on the prevention strategy, that again is the 7th of September, so that will probably stay in that slot if everyone's agreeable. And a cultural audit of the organisation, which is somewhat akin to what you were talking about, Duncan, perhaps. No, but it's allied to the, yeah, well, depends how you ask the question. So we've got the statutory items, which is the proposed precept, and we've got the draft police and crime bill and variation of it. Sorry?
Are you not going to put the criminal justice?
Well, again, I'm just wondering.
I honestly think that's very important.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if we've got the statutory items which we are looking at, which is the proposed precept and the draft police and crime plan, which will be part of the work for the next meeting. Yeah. Rural crime, yes. Harassment of women and girls. Update the criminal. Is that
Chairman, you usually get an update in your performance report about that.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we discussed it this morning.
Yeah.
So it's
So
normally in the activity report.
Yeah. So we'll leave it as it is.
As long as they mention it.
Yeah.
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 Because as I said, it's important at the moment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Chairman.
Unless I've misunderstood the situation, it seems that shoplifting is on the increase, and I think at some stage in the future we ought to put it down for review. It may be by the time we get there it's resolved. There's obviously things going on, but
yeah.
it's just a bit of an omission. I think if my residents were here, they'd say, well, why isn't that being discussed?
But again, I agree with you, but I would say that about a number of issues.
I'm trying to be led by the data.
No, I
rather
understand
than
that, but yeah, there are other uptake in rural crime, etc. That's quite an epidemic. So yes, but we take them where we can when we can. You're quite right. People will have concerns, and if we can address them at the relevant time, that's a good idea. But we are limited in our 3 hours that we do. Carol.
Is there a way to combine it by looking at crime against businesses, so you can pick up not on the rural crime in households, but the farming rural crime, but also then your town crime as well? Don't know. It was just a thought.
I'm just looking at the rural crime and town crime. Would that be too much to have in one go? Yeah. So I think if we add that as a potential item, town crime, and that'll fit what Viv has been saying. Andy, sorry.
Thanks, Barry. Just a quick one. Last year we had quite a long conversation at one of these meetings about the most appropriate agency.
Yep.
So where the police were going to stop going out to mental health call-outs. That's not been mentioned today.
No, it hasn't,
maybe previous one. So whether it could be a substantive item at a future meeting.
Yeah, I think we need to prepare. If we mentioned it at the next meeting, as a precursor to the commissioner doing something about it, reporting back to us. So yeah, we'll report it. We'll inform you next time of our concern over it. Thank you for that, Andy. Who else is there? Helen.
Oh no, Liz. Sorry.
Liz. Sorry.
Yeah, Chair, I was just wanting to double check. Are we adding a next meeting onto the bottom of our work programme and draft populating it? Because if we don't add another meeting beyond November, I think we need to kind of say what it is we think we're going to be doing in the meeting beyond November.
Yeah, we
just so that we don't eat the programme up.
No, I agree with you. But I think that's going to be a symptom of what we're doing is the fact that we do eat programmes up because of the information. The meeting after September or November is February, yeah?
It will be February, Chairman, and we will be issuing the dates for 2025 in due course. We just haven't done it yet.
Okay, so if we can deal with that in February, we'll
populate the work programme so you've got the slots there ready to allocate to. We'll do that as well.
Right. Who else? Anybody else?
I don't think so.
So, did you want to say something? No.
No, I think.
Right. Okay. I think we've got as far as we can with the work programme at the moment, which will be coming out to you for your consideration in due course. Any other questions, observations? I'd like to thank you all for coming and for staying until these lesser mortals left. But I'll see you at the next one, and stay safe and healthy.